It is an election that is being closely watched across the world. For those who anticipated high-octane political drama, there has been absolutely no disappointment. Hello and welcome. You're watching our continuing coverage of the U.S. presidential election right here on WION World is One. I'm Molly Gambhir. Over the last few hours, U.S. President Donald Trump has declared victory while counting is still underway. He has also threatened to try and stop the election vote count. The Biden camp has called the president's statement outrageous, saying that they are ready for a legal battle. There have been protests in several parts. And in news that's just coming in, Washington, D.C. has reported stabbing incidents near the White House. These are initial details that have just trickled in moments ago. 3 men have received non-life-threatening injuries and were sent to the hospital after an altercation. These are reports that have been coming in throughout the day of protests, but in the latest, a stabbing incident being reported from Washington, D.C. The 3 men have been identified as members of a far-right group, Proud Boys, the group which was in the news, remember, after the president had refused to condemn white supremacy. We will closely monitor all those developments coming in, but first to the latest from the key states. Breaking it down all one by one, begin by taking a closer look at the states where a clear winner has been declared for now. U.S. President Donald Trump has been declared a winner in Florida, Iowa, Ohio and Texas. With the solid Republican states, Trump roughly has 213 electoral votes in his favor. And on the other hand, we have Arizona, Minnesota and New Hampshire. These key battleground states voting for the Democratic challenger Joe Biden. With the major states and other solid Democratic strongholds, Joe Biden has a lead of 238 electoral votes in his favor. But these are results that are still trickling in. It's not over till it's over. And the campaign teams are now majorly focusing on the battlefields of Pennsylvania, Michigan and Wisconsin. So are the pollsters for the latest figures. And joining us on the broadcast this minute is our correspondent Susan Tehrani, who's been tracking the very latest coming in. Susan, over to you. Give us a sense of the mood on the ground. Protests that have been reported in several parts already.
That's right, Molly. As you mentioned, emotions are high on anxiety, some excitement. It's a very critical time in the election, post-election day, so to say, considering the fact that on the one hand, you had the Democrats really being confident that they're going to have this sort of blue wave with the election of Joe Biden, and we'd probably have answers by now. And we're seeing that that's really not the case. While Biden is ahead, this really has been a race that's been neck and neck. Washington, D.C. has been seeing protests and demonstrations in front of the White House, even during the time that Americans were out voting yesterday, during voting hours, and that sort of carried on through the night. We saw similar protests and demonstrations here in New York, Times Square. Nothing violent in New York, mostly dancing, peaceful protesters gathering around, except for one gathering that was in Union Square, a really hallmark location for usually protests by Democrats, progressives, and the left. And there were people holding signs to vote him out, vote them out, Donald Trump and Mike Pence. But nothing violent happened over there either, but that was probably the biggest sort of display of demonstration, so to say, here in New York. Other places like Washington, D.C., you mentioned there have been stabbings. There has been a heavy police deployment here in New York City. You see behind me, the streets are calm. People have, for the most part, stayed home. But, as the night falls, as we get results, the police here in New York are ready, and across the country, they've been on high alert as well to see what happens in this contentious election.
Absolutely, but Donald Trump has already prematurely declared victory and even threatened to halt vote counting at a crucial time when key states are still counting ballots. The American president has accused the Democrats of trying to steal the election. Take a listen into what he said earlier in the day.
We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay?
Meanwhile, his rival Joe Biden has urged his supporters to show patience and allow the process to play out. Take a listen in.
Every time I'd walk out of my grandpa's house up in Scranton, he'd yell, "Joey, keep the faith." And my grandma, when she was alive, yelled, "No, Joey, spread it. Keep the faith, guys. We're going to win this." Thank you, thank you, thank you. Your patience is great.
Those were remarks coming in from the two main contenders as counting is still underway. Now, from the campaign trail to the courts is where the battle seems to be headed, especially at a time when there are deep divisions in the United States and now clashes, violence and protests over the last few hours. From Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles to Portland, demonstrators have been taking to the streets to protest against the President of the United States. They've even clashed outside the White House throughout the election night. With emotions flaring, dozens have been arrested. Chanting crowds in Seattle carried Black Lives Matter banners, some of them even dressed in all black apparel. Black Lives Matter protests were held at New York City's Times Square as well. As the national contest is too close to call, New Yorkers eagerly awaiting the results of the presidential election. Susan Derali has been getting us the very latest. Susan, deep divisions across the United States. Many would say the United States stands as divided as ever. The protests that started off with the killing of George Floyd, the movement has now intensified. Over the last few hours, we've seen protests not limited, though, to the Black Lives Matter protest movement. Give us a sense of what the protesters have been demanding.
Molly, emotions are high on both sides. Most of these protesters are those who are affiliated with groups that are close to Black Lives Matter. They're groups that are progressive, they're on the left, they demand social reform and social justice. So in every sense, they sort of go out and protest on what they want. And since they haven't been really sort of addressed by the Democratic Party, they have this entitlement to go out even before the results are out and protest and you know, air their grievances, which there's nothing wrong with that as long as it's peaceful. But I think what the concern right now is when one side declares victory prematurely or the other side doesn't come out and condemn violent protests, then things could get out of hand very easily before we even have results. These people, not only the ones that go out to protest, but those who are very emotional on both sides know what's at stake. The country can go in two different directions. It can go towards the Democrats, a party that has been demonstrating that it prefers to be to the left more than center, or to the Republicans who want to keep the status quo with Donald Trump's America First policy, American exceptionalism, entrepreneurship, and the values that they've been used to, notably in red states. So this is what these protests are about at this point. And then you have some that take advantage of the election to go out and just cause trouble. There's no need for stabbing on election night here in the United States, but we do see that, and I think the police are ready to confront that as well. It's as we get closer to knowing who is really the winner, I think we'll see more unrest and clash between the two sides. And one of the reasons is because this race has been so close. I mean, if this was a landslide by now for either party, I don't know how much of unrest we would have seen. It's just, I guess, what we see on the streets across America is a demonstration of how divided the United States is politically at this point.
Indeed. So it is boiling down to the key battleground states. Stay with me, Susan. The 5 key states that we are now going to take a closer look at. First being Wisconsin, which has given out a sudden narrow lead to Joe Biden. It's a razor-thin one. Both the candidates are in a spot of a few decimal points. The result of Wisconsin will be the one to watch out for. It's been called a game changer. Donald Trump is leading in Michigan by over 4 points, with just 80% of the votes having been counted. It will be too soon to call a winner there just yet. Even the swing state of Pennsylvania looks favorable for Donald Trump, who is enjoying a double-digit lead, but again, only 65% of the total ballots have been counted as of now. The crucial state of North Carolina is tilting towards the red. Trump has a lead of 8 percentage points and over 90% of the votes have been counted. Same trends being witnessed in Georgia as well, where Donald Trump is enjoying a lead of 2 percentage points and 94% of the votes cast have been counted. What are the other key states looking like? How long will it take for the result to even give us a better sense of who is emerging as a clear winner? I will go back across to Susan, but first, it's an election marked by anxiety, a series of litigations over voting access. Exit polls have found voters closely divided on a number of issues. Take a listen in.
I've always been a Democrat, but I do not like Biden. I think Biden will put us into the poorhouse if we follow him. I'm not a Trump fan because of his personality, but I think he's got a better head on his shoulders than Biden does for getting us out of that after we get out of this coronavirus.
Trump.
How come?
I would like the way he runs stuff, and I don't like the way Biden does it, so it's quite simple.
President Trump, keep our taxes low. I don't believe in socialism or communism.
As per the exit polls, the African Americans had favored Joe Biden over Donald Trump, especially after the massive nationwide Black Lives Matter protests, which reached no conclusion as per reports. Another strong group favoring Joe Biden was non-white college graduates. Though in the early exit polls, Biden won the Latino vote 2-1. The results suggested that Donald Trump improved his standing among the Latino voters in at least 2 key swing states. Since 2016, in both Florida and Georgia, the president increased his vote margin since his matchup with Hillary Clinton 4 years ago, and a majority of women are favoring Joe Biden.
I voted for Joe Biden because I honestly feel that Trump has done a terrible job while he's been in. He's all for himself. I want somebody that's going to look out for seniors, older people who can't work, things like that. And I think Biden will do a much better job.
Other key groups on the blue side are Asian and independent voters, who are also known as the third-party voters. Donald Trump has strong support from the white voters, and white voters without college degrees accounted for about 1/3 of the electorate nationally, which Donald Trump won about 6 in 10 of those votes nationally.
I voted for Donald Trump because I think he was treated unfairly over the pandemic, the coronavirus, and I don't think it's anyone's fault. I think it's something that happened that we couldn't control. And I've lost family members to it, and I still think it was beyond our control.
Another strong support group on the red side, the Catholics, the white evangelics, and other Christian voters. Now, this election may see the highest turnout in decades, though it comes at a time when uncertainty is looming large about various aspects of the process, given the remarks that the president himself has made. He has questioned the legitimacy of the voters, remember. Republicans seeing a path to victory that might not include the popular vote at the same time. And for the third cycle in a row, Democrats have designs on control of the Senate, but can win it only by flipping seats in states where President Trump is favored. As of now, the Republicans have a 47-53 majority in the Senate, but this year's election has only 35 Senate seats up for grabs. Some are considered to be competitive, where the seats can be flipped. Republicans defending 23 seats, while the Democrats are defending 12. There are a few major victors in the Senate race as well. The Democratic Senator Mark Kelly has won in Arizona. The GOP lawmaker Joni Ernst secures the state of Iowa. Lindsey Graham has won South Carolina for the fourth time in a row, just to name a few. So has Mitch McConnell, the winner of Kentucky. Other winners are the GOP Senators Mitt Romney of Utah, Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine. They have diverged policy ideas from Trump as well. What happens if Joe Biden wins presidency? What happens if Trump is re-elected? Interestingly, GOP lawmakers are distancing themselves from President Trump on that front. Many have been urging voters to vote for the most capable senator who best represents their state and their point of view. And going back across to our correspondent Susan Teherani, who's been getting us a sense of the very latest coming in from on the ground. The battle for the Senate is the other crucial one that we have been closely monitoring. Susan, give us up to speed, give us a sense of the latest coming in.
Yeah, for now, it seems like the Republican will keep hold of the Senate, which is good news for Donald Trump and his supporters, considering the fact that there may be a likelihood that Joe Biden might take the presidency. Where decisions are made at the end of the day in Washington is at the Senate and in Congress. Some seats are up for grabs in Congress, the House of Representatives as well. They're going to Republicans, but it's very likely that the Democrats will hang on to Congress, but with a smaller majority, as House Speaker Nancy Pelosi would want to see, and the Senate will very likely be in the hands of Republicans. That's when those that support Donald Trump and the Republican Party in general can sort of breathe a sigh of relief, if you may, that whatever decision the Democrats want to take, notably the ones that are very progressive and on the left in Congress, like the Green New Deal and other measures, that there sort of will be some kind of resistance coming from the Senate, and that's what they're hoping for at this point.
The other big headline coming in has been how the social media giants have been under fierce scrutiny over policing online content. And now, at this crucial juncture, when the results are awaited, the votes counting is underway, Trump has once again become the #1 enemy of social media platforms. In a real-time test of their rules on handling misinformation and premature claims of victory, Facebook and Twitter have flagged some of President Trump's posts on the U.S. election, with votes still being counted across America. Twitter concealed a Trump tweet that claimed, "We are up big, but they are trying to steal the election." Now, this tweet carried a label which said that the tweet was potentially misleading. The company also restricted users' ability to share that post. Facebook added a label to the same post that said final results may be different from the initial vote count, as ballot counting will continue for days or weeks. There was no Twitter label on a separate post in which Trump said he would make a statement. He added, and I'm quoting, "a big win." That's all that he said. Facebook added a notice to that post as well, saying that votes are still being counted. The winner of the 2020 U.S. presidential election has not been projected. And our correspondent Simon Marks is now joining us live on the broadcast. Hi, Simon. As anticipated, the president wants to take the battle all the way to the courts. But how prepared is the Republican camp for that challenge, given how things have gone, for example, in Texas, with that court ruling coming in just 24 hours ago? Their preparation for this challenge that they themselves have jumped into, it seems, looks extremely questionable because they've gone to the courts repeatedly without evidence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the courts have generally, up until now, including in a whole slew of recent judgments just over the last 10 days, some of them coming from the Supreme Court itself, not sided with the idea that it's okay not to count votes in a presidential election. But that is very much what President Trump appears to be proposing. He's claiming victory, even though he hasn't won a victory yet. And he's basically saying that any votes that have been cast for Joe Biden should not now be counted. It's not clear whether he's okay with votes that have been cast for him being counted, but he definitely wants to shut down the vote count in any manner that might lead to Joe Biden being dragged over the finishing line. And there is evidence here just within the last hour that Joe Biden is edging closer to that finishing line. He's ahead now in Wisconsin. He's ahead now in Michigan. Were he to win Nevada, were his victory in Arizona to be confirmed, and were he to win Michigan, he'd have everything that he needed to reach that magic number of 270 votes in the Electoral College. He would be declared the winner of the presidency. Look, until 2 o'clock this morning here in Washington, it was not a controversial notion to suggest that the only way you find out who wins an American presidential election is to count all the votes. But President Donald Trump has suddenly upended all of that, insisted that there is fraud underway here, and again falsely claimed that millions of votes are fraudulently cast by post in American presidential elections.
Indeed, high-octane political action that is expected over the next few hours to continue. No disappointment for those who were anticipating a lot of that drama. Thanks very much, Simon Marks, for speaking with us and sharing your perspectives. Also, Susan Tehrani for joining us with the very latest.